Hello everyone and welcome back to K Gutte's online lecture series, A Smart Way of Learning. So you are here with myself KW Gutte, your course educator. Great to see you again in this video lecture. In the last video lecture, we have discussed poetics, nature of poetry, functions of poetry, and emotional appeal of poetry. Even we have discussed theory of imitation in last video lecture on Aristotle. In this video lecture, again we are going to discuss Aristotle, his observations on tragedy, its origin, characteristics, constituent parts, his concept of tragic hero, and Aristotle's observation on comedy, Aristotle's observations on epic, and his observations on style. Now, Aristotle's observations on tragedy. According to Aristotle, tragedy came from efforts of poets to present men as nobler or better than they are in real life. As Aristotle says that art is an imitative art, every art is imitative, and poetry also is an imitative art. What it imitates? It imitates noble actions of good men and mean actions of bad men. From noble actions of good men results epic, and from mean actions of bad men results satire. From noble actions can be created hymns to God and praise to the famous men. Epic imitates noble actions of good men, and satire imitates trivial actions of meaner men. Tragedy bears the same relation to epic as comedy to satire. Epic and tragedy are imitations of noble actions of good men. Epic and tragedy are superior to satire and comedy. Satire and comedy concern to actions of low men. Tragedy is supposed as superior to epic, as Aristotle thinks tragedy is superior to epic, and tragedy has all elements of epic in shorter compass, with music and spectacular effect which epic does not have. Tragedy is more compact in design. Aristotle devoted big portion of poetics to tragedy. What are the characteristics of tragedy according to Aristotle? Tragedy as an imitation of action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. Language decorated with all kinds of ornaments. So tragedy, it is an imitation of action. That action is of a serious kind. That action is complete. And that action has some kind of a magnitude, length. And the language in tragedy is decorated with all kinds of figures of speech and ornaments. Tragedy is in form of action and not in narrative form. Through pity and fear, through tragedy, emotions of pity and fear can be aroused, and these emotions can purify the hurt of a man. So there can be effect of purgation on hurt and mind. Tragedy is a tale of suffering that excites pity and fear. Tragedy is a tale of suffering, and that tale excites pity, emotions of pity and fear. Actions in tragedy comprises all human activities, including deeds, thoughts, and feelings. These actions should be complete, with beginning, middle, and end. A beginning with which audience or reader does not need to be told anything to understand the story. The middle and the last, there would be end. So there should be organic whole in tragedy. Everything should be perfect at the beginning, middle, and end. The beginning should be self-satisfactory, self-containing. It should tell everything. There should not be need of any explanation. And sequences would be such sequences that should not disturb the action or the plot of the tragedy. It should look like an organic whole. All sequences should depend upon each other. And there should be an organic unity and natural sequence of events that cannot be disturbed. That natural sequence should not be disturbed. It should be having organic whole. And plot should have certain kind of a length or magnitude so that mind may comprehend fully in one view or within required time. If plot is too short, it will miss many things. If it is too long, it will not take all events within time required. So length should be in right proportion. The plot should not be too short and it should not be too long. It should be appropriate. It is said tragedy should happen in a single revolution of a day. Aristotle says it should be a length which can be easily embraced by memory, but it should have length enough to unfold its sequence of events, the beginning, middle, and end. In tragedy, there are artistic elements like rhythm, harmony, and song, which are not employed all together, but as occasion demands. They are applied and employed as the occasion demands. Rhythm and harmony that in verse may be used to develop some parts and songs. They are meant to enrich play and to make it effective and in its purpose as possible. The form of action distinguishes tragedy from narrative verse, that is epic. So epic and tragedy are different. Epic is in narrative form, but tragedy is in the form of action that can be staged. In tragedy, the tale is told with the help of moving characters. The speeches and actions make the tale. In epic, the narrator of the story is poet, and poet is free to speak in his own person. But in tragedy, dramatist is nowhere. He is nowhere seen because it is done by his characters. Tragedy is intended to be acted as well as read, whereas epic is in narrative form and it is only meant for reading. So what are the constituent parts of tragedy? Aristotle in his Poetics talks about tragedy and the constituent parts of tragedy. There are 6 constituent parts of tragedy. First, plot. Second, character. Third, thought. Fourth, diction. Fifth, song. And sixth, spectacle. Plot, character, and thought are object of imitation. Diction and song are medium of imitation. And spectacle is the manner of imitation. So, object of imitation, medium of imitation, and manner of imitation. Plot, character, and thought are object of imitation. Diction and song are medium of imitation. Spectacle is manner of imitation. So we'll discuss first plot in detail. Plot is the arrangement of incidents and plot is the chief part of tragedy. Tragedy is an imitation of action and life. Life consists actions. Without action, there can be no tragedy. There is a structure of plot. What kind of structure of plot is there? Plot is the soul of tragedy. Plot is artistic arrangement of incidents. Plot should have unity of action, unity of time, and unity of place. There should be unity of action, time, and place in plot of a tragedy. What is unity of action? Unity of action refers to only those actions in the life of hero which are connected to one another and appear as one whole. There may be many actions in the life of the hero, but action that has something to do with tragedy that befalls him. Actions which are not relevant with befall should be kept out. So, actions in the tragedy should be only related to the befall of hero in the tragedy. Other actions, other irrelevant actions are unnecessary. They should be kept out of the plot. Events should be related to the hero of the tragedy, and actions should be related to only his befall. Aristotle casually talks about unity of time, that is, uniformity between the time taken by events of the play and time taken in a representation on the stage. Time taken by the event and time taken by representation on the stage. There should be the uniformity. Tragedy should confine itself to a single revolution of the sun. It should confine itself to the single revolution of a sun or day. Epic has no limit of time, whereas tragedy has the limit of time, because tragedy is to be staged. A good tragic plot may have events that happen within 24 hours so that when it is staged, it may not appear unnatural. And Aristotle talks about unity of place. Unity of place, that is conformity between the scene of tragic event and the time taken by them to happen. The setting of the play should have one place. So, a good tragic plot to arouse emotions of pity and fear in spectator or reader. Pity from undeserved suffering of a hero and fear from the worst that may happen to him. So tragedy should arouse the emotions of pity and fear. Pity from undeserved suffering of a hero and fear of the worst that may happen to him. The change of fortune should not from bad to good, but from good to bad. So Aristotle talks about unhappy ending. Tragedy should have unhappy ending. Only that unhappy ending will arouse tragic pleasure and the pity and fear, emotions of pity and fear. These emotions can be resulted from two ways. First, by spectacular means, and second, by inner structure of plot. Spectacular means may be theatrical effects such as physical torture, piteous lamentations, and beggarly appearance. Inner structure of plot may be such as brother unknowingly killing a brother and discovering the fact later. So there can be emotions aroused from tragedy by the spectacular means, by the theatrical effect, piteous lamentation, beggarly appearance, physical torture. And it can be aroused, emotions can be aroused by inner structure of a plot, a character killing another character knowing that he was his brother. Inner structure of a plot can have that emotions aroused when it is intending good doing evil, or little error visiting a heavy punishment. Without aid of eyes, he who hears the tale will thrill with the horror and melt to the pity. So, the plot of tragedy should be such that even when it is told by somebody, a tale told by somebody, the hearer would thrill with horror and melt with the pity. Plot is divisible into two parts. First is complication and second is denouement. Complication ties events into a tangled knot and denouement extends from turning point to the end. First is called rising action and second is called falling action. So plot can be divisible into complication and denouement. Plot may be simple or complex. Plot can be again divided into two, simple and complex plot. In simple plot, there are no puzzling situations. In a simple plot, actions revolve around the principal character. It has single action and unity. In complex plot, there are multiple plots and actions. There is a reversal of fortune which is accompanied by discovery or recognition. There is peripecia and anagnorisis. Peripecia is explained as a reversal of fortune or a reversal of circumstances or turning point. The term peripecia is primarily used with reference to the work of literature, the change of fate of the hero from happiness to misery. So peripecia, this term is used by Aristotle in his Poetics to call it as a reversal of fortune or the reversal of circumstances, killing an enemy and discovering him as a kinsman, or something that is happy turns into misery is called a peripecia as a reversal of fortune or the turning point. Aristotle defines anagnorisis as a change from ignorance to knowledge, producing love or hate between the persons, destined by the poet for a good or bad fortune. The discovery of false moves taken in ignorance is anagnorisis, a change from ignorance to knowledge. Both peripecia and anagnorisis please because there is the element of surprise in them. A change from ignorance to knowledge, and peripecia is the change of fortune, reversal of fortune. Both elements are pleasure giving because there is a surprise element in it. A plot that makes use of them in complex and a perfect tragedy should be arranged not on the simple but complex plot. Second element of the tragedy is character. Characterization provides the base to the plot. They should be representatives of universal figure. Characters should be representatives of universal figure. Tragedy imitates not just men but their actions. We know characters by their deeds. Deeds issue from character, and so character is next important to plot. A poet should aim for four things. First, the hero must be good and thus manifest moral purposes in his speech. Second, the hero must have propriety or manly valor. Thirdly, the hero must be true to life. And finally, hero must be consistent. Character must represent true human nature. He should be an ordinary man struggling with demons, with courage. So character is the person who is representing a man in general. And that's why characterization is important. Characterization provides the base to the plot. Character must represent true human nature. He should be an ordinary man struggling with demons with courage. Third is thought. The next important part to character is thought. Thought is what character thinks or feels during his career in his play. Character reveals itself through speech. A plot imitates action, character imitates men, So thought imitates men's mental emotional reactions to the circumstances in which they find themselves. So thought is an important element. It shows the behavior of the character through his thought process. Fourth element of the tragedy is diction. Diction is the selection of vocabulary by dramatist. Words selected should be worth arousing emotions. So a playwright should have such words, he should use such words that should arouse the emotions. Diction is portrayal of emotions through the instrument of words. Words are instruments through which emotions can be aroused. They carry with them meaning that stimulate the desired response in spectator. To accomplish the object of imitation in tragedy, poet employs medium of diction or word with artistic element. So diction is an important instrument by which he can arouse the emotions of pity and fear. The word is an important instrument through which he can get the desired effect from the spectator. Fifth element of the tragedy is song. Song is also called as a music and musical effect on the stage. Song is one of the parts of a tragedy. It is an ornamental language that can be used in a tragedy. By means of diction and song, poet expresses thought of his character and meaning of his play. So song is also one of the important elements of tragedy. Sixth element of tragedy is spectacle. Spectacle is also called a stagecraft. It is least concerned with poetry. Spectacle is stage mechanism. Tragedy is presented with the spectacle. Like an epic, it deserves purpose even when read and not acted at all. So spectacle is nothing but a stage representation or stage craft, because tragedy is to be played on the stage, and that's why a desired effect can be achieved. Aristotle has represented his concept of tragic hero in Poetics. Tragedy aims at arousing emotions like pity and fear. So choice of a hero is limited, whose actions can produce such effect among the spectators. When a hero confronts a downfall, he is recognized as a tragic hero or protagonist. When a character who is protagonist, who is a hero of the tragedy, when he befalls, when he confronts to a downfall, he will be considered as a tragic hero. Hero confronts his downfall due to his fate or by his own mistake or any other social reason. Aristotle defines a tragic hero as a person who must evoke a scene of pity and fear in the audience. He is considered as a man of misfortune that comes to him through error of judgment. A tragic hero's downfall evoke feelings of pity and fear among the audience. So tragic hero arouses the emotions of pity and fear. The hero should not be bad man. What are the qualities of a tragic hero? He should not be a bad man, raised from adversity to prosperity. Because if he is a bad man, if he is a bad character, then he cannot arouse the pity and fear. Even he cannot deserve a good fortune. So there should not be the arousal of pity and fear if the hero is a bad man. The hero cannot be utter villain. His fall may be a matter of gratification when he is a villain. It may arouse pleasure rather than the pity and fear. So if a pity and fear, these emotions should be aroused through tragedy, the hero should not be utter villain. He should not be a bad man. On the other hand, he should be a good man. And the hero of the tragedy should be a kind of a character who can be a good and just, whose misfortune is brought not by vice but by some error. His misfortune is brought by some error. His misfortune excites pity. If the hero is a good and just, his misfortune brings the emotions of pity and fear. And it is out of all proportion. His error of judgment and his overall goodness excites these emotions of pity and fear for his doom. Now we'll discuss Aristotle's observations on comedy. Not much has been said on comedy in his Poetics, but roots of comedy lie deep in satirical verse. Satirical verse has its origin in phallic songs sung in honor of Dionysus, the god of fertility, as epic poetry originated from earlier hymns to the god and praises of famous men. Comedy follows its parental form, satirical verse and phallic songs, representing men as worse than they are. Satire ridicules personalities, whereas comedy ridicules general voices. Whereas satire ridicules personalities, comedy doesn't ridicule personalities, but it ridicules general voices. Characters in comedies should be men who have some defect or ugliness which is not painful or destructive. Characters in comedies should be men who have some defect or ugliness which is not painful or destructive. Characters in comedy can provoke laughter and it will not lead to harm or pain either to themselves or others. These characters are not wicked, but they can put us into humor. There should not be malicious pleasure in comedy. Aristotle says the comedy should ridicule the general voices and there should not be a personal comment, a malicious pleasure in the comedy. Comedy is ridiculing the voices, universal voices. Comedy is not targeting to a particular person. Pleasure aroused from comedy should not from personal but a general foible. That should not be any kind of malice. Names in the comedy can be funny, like brainworm, backbite, morus, which suggest a section of humanity rather than particular men. So these characters are names will be universal and not individual. In Poetics, Aristotle has observations on epic. What are his observations on epic? Origin of epic is earlier than tragedy and comedy. Epic grew out of old hymns to the gods and songs sung in praise of famous men. The nature of epic is like tragedy, but it differs in form. What is applicable to the good poetry is also applicable to the epic poetry. The plot of epic has denouement of turning point. Plot of epic may also be simple or complex, like tragedy. It has unity of actions and can produce pleasure. Epic also has tragic happenings. Characters of an epic are noble sorts as tragedy. Plot, character, thought and diction are same as tragedy. But songs and spectacle belongs only to tragedy. Epic imitates life by narration, whereas tragedy imitates dramatic action and speech. Epic has greater length than tragedy. Epic is lengthy. Tragedy is not that much lengthy. It can communicate its meaning through reading or recitation. But epic is not to be staged as tragedy. Everything can happen everywhere because epic is in narrative form. Many events simultaneously can be presented in epic. Epic have grandeur of effects to divert the mind and reliving the story with varying episodes. Epic have improbable or marvelous things that can be used more than tragedy. Supernatural things can be pursued by imagination in epic, whereas it can be pursued by eyes in tragedies. There are so many supernatural elements can be used in epic, and that can be pursued by imagination. Poet prefers probable impossibilities, that is, believable false to the unbelievable true, convincing lie to an unconvincing fact. Such supernatural things can be used aesthetically in epic. Now, Aristotle's observations on style. Aristotle remarks on the language of poetry in poetics, and he comments on style in rhetoric. In both, he lays down two essentials of good writing. First is clearness, and second is propriety. The object of writing will be achieved when the meaning will be clear or intelligible. Meaning shall be different at different times. The same mode of writing may not be proper for them all. So, the style of writing should have clarity, it should have the propriety, suitability. Meaning shall be different at different times. The same mode of writing may not be proper for them all. So, propriety of language is required in writing. Writing, being an art, should aim at dignity and charm. There should be dignity and charm in writing. There should be use of unfamiliar words, archaic words, foreign words, dialect words, newly coined words to add the element of surprise and novelty. These words, unfamiliar words, archaic words, newly coined words, add the element of surprise, element of novelty. There can be metaphorical words to convey hidden meaning, which is not equal to apparent meaning. This can add surprising element in it. There should be judicious combination of all sorts of words in poetic style. So in this video lecture, we have discussed Aristotle's observations on poetry, its origin, its characteristics, constituent parts of tragedy, tragic hero, and Aristotle's observations on poetry, Aristotle's observations on epic, and his observations on style. So thank you for watching K. Gutte's online lecture series. I hope this video lecture will surely help you to understand Aristotle and his concepts on tragedy, his idea of tragic hero, his observations on comedy, observations on epic, observations on style. If you like this video, hit the like button. You can share this video with other students. Thank you.